myfantasysportstalk.com.
And welcome back, podcast peeps, to another edition of My Fantasy Podcast from myfantasysportstalk.com. We are in the thick of football season now. It's here. I mean, all you got to do is step outside. You can smell it. Football is here. Thankfully, because there's been some slow time in sports here going on over the last month or so, but football is here, so that means fantasy drafts, and that's what we're going to be covering today. We got some mailbag questions to answer from you guys at home, so we appreciate that. All fantasy related, so it's time of the year to start breaking down fantasy football, because My Fantasy Sports Talk has our fantasy league draft coming up this Sunday.
Say what?
I don't know how it's here already, but I'm your host, Brandon Reed. My co-host is Daniel Shaw. This Sunday?
It's scheduling. It's all about scheduling, man. You try and plan a draft date with 14 guys living in 14 different states, basically, and you get back to me with a better draft date.
Then you got guys throwing you crap all season long about this rule is wrong. You know, you need to make this rule change. This is ridiculous. You know, I can't stand guys like that. That makes the commissioner's job hard.
You know, you add a lot of stress to my life, and it's unnecessary, Brandon.
Hey, but I got a feeling the league is going to be better this coming year because of it. Folks at home, we didn't even have an IR slot last year. I can't deal with that. There has to be an IR slot. Then limited acquisitions too. No IR and limited acquisitions. That makes for a tough league, especially if you have players going down. So it's all kind of luck of the draw there. But we're heavily fantasy football today. A lot going on in the Buffalo area. So we brought in our guy, Ryan Thomas, too. I mean, he can talk Bills, I guess, but he's really just here for his general input. So I hope he can handle that. What up, Ryan?
I can handle it. I'm good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem. So you got Brendan Griffin on your podcast as well. Like it?
Yeah, he was a great guest to have. We talked about a lot of different things, the pro wrestling scene right now, the past, the present, the future, his career. We discussed as well MMA, Ronda Rousey going from MMA to the WWE. So a little bit of something for everybody. There was some pro football talk. I asked Brendan who is 5 most influential people in sports, people that he looks up to. And Tom Brady was at the top of his list. So, check that out.
Attended his academy, TB12 Academy.
Right. We talked about that. And, you can check that out. It's on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast YouTube channel and Facebook page.
There you go. So shout out Brendan Griffin doing big things. We'll have him back on soon. Again, off the top, like I said, today is all about fantasy football. I can't wait. Ryan, are you ready for a draft this coming Sunday?
I'm ready, man. The first year I went 10-4. Last year I went 7-6. I hope I get back to that 10-4 range. That's the goal.
It's tough. You
got to be prepared.
Never know what'll happen, and just
right.
But this year,
Brandon, you haven't mentioned that I won the championship last year. Who's that next? Is that coming next?
As I was saying, Ryan, we got a lot of positive rule changes. Thanks to some good folks out there in the league that try to just even the league out a little bit, because it makes it hard sometimes when you have rules set up the way they were. So I don't know.
The way I see it, Brandon won the first year I played. Dan won last year. Now it's my turn, right?
That's the way you see it. The way I see it, I'm looking to break this split that Dan and I have is the way I'm seeing. Last year was an off year, so I gave Dan his glory. Now I'm back serious. No more Eddie Lacy in my diet. No more Spencer Ware. So
that's rough.
I'm ready.
No more taking quarterbacks in the second round for me, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, probably. I think that depends year from year. I mean, that's never a popular
Yeah.
strategy, but to me, if it's somebody like Aaron Rodgers, who is going to probably put up 30 points a game, then and be one of the top fantasy producers, yeah, I want that guy on my team. I have. I've drafted quarterbacks number one overall before. But I think it depends on year by year. Mostly, I think that
Right.
running back position is going to be really what's important. And looking at our mailbag questions here, the majority of the questions and our time spent probably today will be talking about fantasy running back. So really key position there. But let's just dive right into it. So we're going to hear from our guy Nick Pertins is back. Got to be expecting a young one there soon, Dan. Right? I mean, we just keep tick tocking. Fall is almost here, so we're gonna have a young trash talking Pertins on our hands real soon.
Yeah, man, he's been, I guess, not super busy lately because he's just been blowing up the fantasy baseball message boards, calling both of us out. We actually, the Pertins and I swung a deal last minute with the trade deadline, so that was good. He's always up for a trade, and he's not. It's weird. He tries to screw you, Brandon, but he already screwed me once, so I think I may have gotten him back with this one. But
But here's the
I
thing:
think
sometimes you're just trading to be trading. Sometimes, I mean, I probably had an offer on the table from Nick all year long at one point or another. So then he got on me about, hey, not even either decline the trade or accept it or let's negotiate. Don't just let it go. I'm like, Nick, I don't even check this message board, but once every two and a half months or so. So this is the first time I've ever seen that message. It was back from May. So I'm just not making deals to be making deals, and I don't know enough. I don't watch enough baseball to know. I don't know. I'm letting my team ride. But I appreciate all the trade offers all year long, Nick. They were plenty. So I did see a last minute deal swung by you guys though. But I mean, seriously, Dan, it seems like Nick's just looking to make deals all year long.
Yeah, I mean, some guys are like that. I mean, he keeps the fantasy season interesting, we'll say that. And I'm looking forward to this. Is going to be the first year he's in the football league with us. So that should just keep football season fun. And it's going to keep something going on the podcast every week, and even with a newborn on the way. I think from what I remember, maybe November is the due date or somewhere around there. But he's going to keep this fantasy season interesting, and I think we're going to incorporate that a lot on the podcast since he is a dedicated viewer, listener, and watcher of us.
Well, and says that he's dominating that baseball league, which he may have the best overall team right now. Pitching staff he got a murderous rotation, that pitching depth, but he's technically number two. As Jason Weeks went down 2 weeks in a row as Dan put Jason Weeks down, and then I followed it up with a knockout blow. So number one may not be so number one. Nick Pertins may have the best overall team, and then me and Dan are fighting for that third and fourth spots as Dylan Davis-Torado just had the best 2 days in league history on me. So he's trying to knock me straight up out the playoffs, and I don't appreciate that. But one more regular season week to go after this, and the playoffs start for the Fantasy Baseball League. We may be crowning a new champion. Nick Pertins wins the fantasy crown this first ever time being in a MFST league. Then major props to you. But here is his football question. Me and Nick probably share this like keeping up with Tennessee, and the Titans are probably our favorite football team. So this is kind of a Tennessee-related question. But looking forward to the football league this year, fellas, looking at my domination of the baseball league. Yeah, we hear you, Nick. You're probably scared about this upcoming NFL season. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Tennessee question for you. Where would you look to draft Dion Lewis? And is he a solid running back 2 option? Can't wait for the draft. Nick Pertins. So, I mean, I'll kind of start with the Tennessee stuff. I would say solid number 2. No, I'm not willing to go that far. I think the main reason is just because from what I'm seeing hearing out of Titans camp and the beat writers and reporters there is that Derrick Henry's got the keys to this car. He's gonna be the workhorse this year, and I see Dion Lewis is more into the game for a lot more pass blocking situations and maybe catching a few passes here and there, which, that's the role he brought into a perfect fit if you're talking about success of the Tennessee Titans. I'm just not sure that translates to big fantasy value, especially not running back 2 fantasy value out of Dion Lewis. So we'll see. I don't know. I would expect them to really run Derrick Henry while you're only paying him about $1.4 million this year, and just run the hell out of him and see what you have and see if you really have that. So I think RB2 you're looking to invest that much into Dion Lewis, that may not be the wisest choice right now. I'm thinking, I don't know. I'm thinking when I think of Dion Lewis, I'm thinking maybe of more your fourth running back option. And if he turns out more than that, that's great. But if you got to think, if you're drafting running backs round 1 and 2, which a lot of guys will do, you don't want to reach in the top 4, 5, 6 rounds for Dion Lewis. I don't think so. I think he'll be there. So don't take him too high, I guess would be my warning as far as Dion Lewis goes. Dan, what do you think?
Well, I running back 2, it obviously depends how deep the league is. Ours is a 14-man league, so maybe I can see him as an RB2 in a 14-man league. He's more of a flex play in my estimation. But
would you classify him like preseason though, going into the draft as an RB2? Are you willing to go that high? Because you got to think RB2 for you is going to be a top 4 round pick, a top 4 pick. Yeah. Seriously.
So he has Lewis has an ADP right now of 62nd overall. So in a 10-man league, that's 6th round. So he's getting drafted, 4 to 6 rounds, 12 and 14-man leagues. So I personally wouldn't feel comfortable just because he isn't the starter. Derrick Henry is the starter. But Tennessee didn't give him $20 million not to use him. So I do think he is going to get used. Tennessee has the 5th easiest strength of schedule for running backs this year, which is another thing that I look at. And I think he's going to be the safety blanket of Marcus Mariota this year. So he's going to surprise. He's in PPR formats. He's going to be a weekly start option on your team. So I am high on him. RB2 is kind of pushing it. I would be comfortable with him as a flex play, especially in PPR leagues. But I do think he's going to get used quite a bit this year.
I love the role he fits as a Titans fan. Yep. It's just that I'm not sure that's going to translate to fantasy value because a lot of that role, like I said, is going to be pass blocking situations. And I don't know Mike Vrabel's scheme, not to mention Matt LaFleur. Don't know really what to expect out of him. I hear him and Mariota are both learning together at the same time. So I don't even know what to expect out of the offense, period. So to me, it's kind of a risk to even think about investing Dion Lewis as your RB2, unless it really is a deep league. Ours 14. Yeah, you're right, Dan. That puts it about 5th round for us in a 14-man league. So to me, I think that's pushing it when there's just too much unknown. Although I do love Dion Lewis on the Titans, if that makes sense. Ryan, so what do you think about Dion Lewis in the Titans backfield in general?
Dion Lewis is a guy that, as the season wore on last year with New England, he put up fantastic numbers. But my main question is not even so much the scheme and how he'll fit with the Titans. It's more so how will he fit with the Titans, being that they're a new team. Sometimes I'm kind of leery of drafting players that are changing scenery. He was so entrenched in that New England offense.
Well, and I also think that Mariota's part of that too.
To Tennessee.
This is a transition year for Mariota as well. I think Mariota still has some things to figure
out. Right. Vrabel is a New England Patriot coach descendant from Belichick. Obviously, going to complement the offense that they've had the last few years. I honestly don't know, but I would say, according to his ADP average draft position, I'd say that 7th, 8th round, I think he would be worth it. But I don't know. It would be tough for me to start him every single week as an RB2 in my lineup. I'd see him as more of a flex guy, potentially an RB2, depending on the matchup. And that's that.
And I would love to see that, but I don't think you're going to know that right off the bat. That's why I think it's a high risk as far as drafting. I think you're going to have to let the Titans kind of play themselves out for 4 or 5 weeks to find out who they are. Seriously, everybody. We got a whole new coaching staff in place here. So I don't know. That's a risk to me. I don't know. I would say just don't draft him too high. Don't. To me personally, I'll give away my thinking in my head. I'm not going to touch him in the first 6 rounds. It's too much for me. That's
7th, 8th round. I would consider it.
And also depending on how depleted the available running back list is looking.
Right.
Yeah, so in a 14-man league, that's going to be tough. So we'll see where he falls. That's a scenario Nick may be facing this Sunday. I'll tell you that much for sure. In our fantasy league, now you've brought it up, and at least 4 of us know about it, Nick. So who's going to reach for Deion Lewis first? That's the question. We probably should just lied to Nick and told him he's a second rounder, Nick. He's a second rounder. Go for it. Maybe that's the last words he'll hear. But appreciate the question. Good luck in the baseball league as well. And we'll see you and talk some more smack with you Sunday in the fantasy draft. The next one comes from Todd Stepnowski. Kenyon Drake or Joe Mixon in a half-point PPR league. I want to hear what Dan has to say on this because I think he's going to disagree with me. I don't know, but I'm just curious to see what he's going to say.
Well, if we're looking at my rankings, which you can check out in the fantasy draft guide that MFST has brought out, I like both running backs. I'm high on them both this year, but I think Joe Mixon is going to break out of that rookie slump that he kind of had, and he's going to bust out a little bit in 2018. I have him as my 10th ranked running back, where Kenyon Drake is my 17th ranked running back. So if you're telling me both of those two, I'm going to take Joe Mixon, but it's close. I mean, it's not too far. A couple things on Kenyon Drake that I actually love is he was number 1 last year in yards after contact. I have it written down at 571 yards after contact on only 133 carries. That was better than Adrian Peterson's yards after contact, his MVP season of 2012.
And not a huge frame on him either. We were talking about like 205 pounds.
Yeah, Kenyon Drake can ball. I mean, he is going to be the feature back in Miami. They have Frank Gore. They have a terrible rookie, Kalen Ballage, out of Arizona State. So Drake is going to be the main guy there, where you might look at Joe Mixon, who has Gio Bernard. They have some other guys in that backfield, like Mark Walton, a rookie out of Miami. But I think Mixon is too talented to not put up numbers this year. So I'm taking Mixon slightly, but Kenyon Drake is a solid play, basically week in, week out in fantasy this year.
See, I knew you were going to be high on Kenyon Drake, and I'm not as much, and I knew that. So that's why I was a little bit shocked. But I'm going to say Joe Mixon, too. It's not close to me. It's Joe Mixon, because what I heard out of Miami is that Kenyon Drake is labeled as the co-starter for the Miami Dolphins along with Frank Gore. So I don't like that, whereas everything I'm hearing out of Cincinnati is that, yes, Joe Mixon is our bell cow. Actually heard that term used. He is going to be the workhorse for sure, the number 1 guy solidified for the Cincinnati Bengals. Also, you mentioned an up and down year for him in his rookie year, but he caught a lot more balls than Kenyon Drake did last year in his rookie season. In 14 games, he caught 30 balls. Kenyon Drake caught around 22 or some balls like that. I don't know, but I think that, first of all, Joe Mixon in his second year he's asking specifically about a PPR league, is Todd. So that's why I'm saying for sure Joe Mixon, not to mention just overall relative fantasy value. I think Joe Mixon's going to be higher, but Joe Mixon's just going to catch more balls than Kenyon Drake. I've never really been high on Tannehill. You know, I kind of feel the same way about him as some people do about Andy Dalton and Joe Flacco. I would take Andy Dalton and Joe Flacco over Tannehill right now this year, to me. Just my opinion. I've never been real high on Tannehill. So I'm mixing all the way here. It's not close to me. So if I had to summarize it, overall fantasy value, I see Joe Mixon as that top 10 type of fantasy guy, and I'm not sure Kenyon Drake is top 20, in my opinion. That's just me. Ryan, how would you assess this situation in comparison between Joe Mixon and Kenyon Drake this year?
I assess it as I think Miami is going to have some real struggles, and I don't know how often they're going to be playing, close in games. How often will they be having to run the ball when they're playing from behind? And their offensive line is suspect at best. As the season wore on last year, it got worse, and I don't think they did much to improve it this offseason. I loved Joe Mixon coming out of college. I really thought he was a great prospect. The only question I had on him was his off the field stuff, which is, it's well documented. Everybody knows about that. But Joe Mixon, as Brandon mentioned, as you mentioned, is the bell cow. When I hear words like bell cow, volume, 30 catches as opposed to 21, 22. And I don't think Miami is going to have a good season. They appear to be in a bit of an identity crisis. And Cincinnati kind of knows where they're at. They know what they have. And Joe Mixon's one of those guys that they know that they have.
Yep, I agree with that. I think it's going to be Joe Mixon's offense, so to speak, in a lot of ways. And I just think this guy, I'm pretty high on him this year. Now that the more and more I think about it, I'm pretty high on Joe Mixon this year because I think there's going to be opportunity there. I'm not really sure how much success the team of the Bengals is going to have, but I agree with Ryan. It's probably going to be more than the Dolphins, who are probably looking at last place in that AFC East. So, and you guys are very familiar with that. So,
yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
Who's going to be last then?
Well, I mean, there's a jersey right there of Ryan's.
They made the playoffs last year.
I don't know. I'm not saying this for obvious reasons, but Ryan Tannehill is one knee injury away from Miami having to put in Brock Osweiler.
And that's another thing that he didn't even play all of last year. Right.
And I'm just not so. And why did they trade Jarvis Landry for a 4th and 6th or a 4th and 7th round pick? That trade boggles my mind. Whether they could.
He's juiced up now in Cleveland, baby. I don't know if y'all been watching the Hard Knock series, which I've been documenting on the website.
He's making Tyrod look good.
Man, he kind of is. He kind of is. But I'll know it just on that Hard Knocks theme real quick, guys, though. But seriously, I've been impressed what I've seen out of Tyrod Taylor because this last episode, I don't know if you guys watched it, but he really kind of stepped up in a leadership role. He went to Hugh Jackson with a suggestion after practice to get under these guys' skin and to get the message across. Hugh Jackson immediately used it. So I think he's stepping up and trying to be a leader. I mean, he played good in the first preseason game. We'll see. Actually throwing the ball a little bit. Who knew? But yeah, I don't know. So
they were running a no huddle offense too in that preseason.
Trying to. I think you're going to see that.
Interesting.
You're going to see that from a few more teams this year. Tennessee's trying to be up tempo like that. I think if Deshaun Watson comes back healthy, you're going to see Houston in a mode like that as well. But we'll see. But anyway, I think it's 3 unanimous votes here. PPR, not Joe Mixon, hands down, Todd. So appreciate the question. So this last one comes from, sorry, Orlando is not here because it's a Dallas-specific question, and I had to think about this one a little bit. But it comes from Johnny DC4L, which obviously means Washington, DC for life, right? Okay. Johnny, Dallas Cowboys for life, Wilkins chimes in and says, who is the wide receiver to own in Dallas, specifically in a PPR league? Hearns, Gallup, Beasley, Williams. Dak is going to have to throw to someone. So who is that someone going to be, Dan?
Michael Gallup. He's going to be the next Dez Bryant. So he's the guy to own. He's rookie out of Colorado State. Watched him a lot in college. Brought out an impressive draft profile leading up to the draft. He's got some talent. He is a rookie. It's hard to trust rookie receivers like that, but I think he is going to be the guy to own, especially in dynasty formats. Now, Allen Hurns is going to have some value, even Cole Beasley in some PPR formats. But Gallup has the best upside. He has the highest ceiling. And I think Dak is going to break out this year and kind of actually throw the ball downfield and really start to stretch the field. If anybody's listened to the podcast last 2 years, I'm a Cowboys fan, but I was not and have not been a believer in Dak. But I do think this is kind of be the year that he can transform that. You saw the connection with Gallup in the preseason, 30-yard touchdown against San Francisco. They seem to have built a chemistry. They work after practice together. So I like that. I like that connection not only on the field for the Cowboys, but in fantasy. I think Gallup will be the best. Hearns is still going to be a solid option. All the Cowboys receivers have fantastic values for their average draft positions, their ADPs. So you're really not going to go wrong with where they're being drafted. They're late round picks, last round picks, hundreds in the ADPs. So nobody is selecting them. Everybody's afraid because they really don't know who to take. But I would take Gallup. And listen, Brandon, I already know you're going to come back with Cole Beasley.
It ain't Gallup.
You're going to come back with Cole Beasley, I'm guessing, because you seem to like that guy. We know what Cole Beasley is. He's not – look at his stats last year. That's more representative of what he's going to do as opposed to 2 years ago.
Catch balls. He was the only one catching balls anytime I watched the Cowboys play.
He wasn't catching balls last year. He had a down year, and he was dropping balls. His catch percentage was
caught more than Dez, didn't he?
Dez was hurt. So, but anyways, it's Michael Gallup. That's going to be the answer.
Okay, Ryan. I knew Dan was going to be so overly optimistic about this guy Gallup on the Cowboys. That was so obvious. That was so obvious. He needs to come with a more realistic answer because he's talking about a dude that's fighting. He's fighting to even be first team. Dan. He's on the second team technically right now.
Who's starting over Michael Gallup? Okay. Tell me.
There's a lot of optimism.
Stop watching the JBA playoffs.
There's a lot of optimism going on right now with you and Michael Gallup. I get it. That's fine. That's more excitement though.
The Des Bryant clone, but younger and no off the field.
You need to give Johnny Wilkins something that's going to help him, not your wishes and dreams and a new poster to put up behind you during this podcast.
Be happy with Michael Gallup.
Okay, so Ryan, what do you think?
I like Michael Gallup, but I'm gonna go just deviate from Gallup, being that Dan, that's his man crush apparently. I'm gonna go with Alan Hearns just due to the fact that he's more of a veteran. I actually always liked Alan Hearns in Jacksonville. I thought he had some pretty solid seasons. He's an underneath route runner, can stretch the field as well. I'm gonna go with Alan Hearns, and mainly I think that you have to trust the guy with the most experience, and Alan Hearns, I think, has the most week in, week out big play experience in Dallas out of all the receivers that they have.
I would tend to agree a lot more with Ryan than Dan, but I'm actually going to go with my guy, Cole Beasley, because he seems to be the one catching all the balls. And now no more Dez, no more Witten, and that's the easiest throw. Cole Beasley's routes are the easiest ones that Dak's going to be able to hit. Okay, and I'm kind of with what you were trying to say, Dan, although, again, it's a new year. You're so optimistic, but Dak is what he is. And the easiest throws for Dak to be making, even this coming year, are going to be the little underneath routes and slant routes to the slot man, and that's Cole Beasley. So if you're talking about PPR and the most catches, I would feel more comfortable, with Cole Beasley on my team. The biggest production, I'm going with Ryan and Alan Hearns, the shiny new weapon. I think he's the best overall receiver left on the roster for sure. And I think I think he's just the best receiver overall. And
Brandon, let me fact check you real quick. You had said Cole Beasley had more receptions than Des Bryant last year. False. Cole Beasley. 36 catches for 314 yards, averaging 8 yards a catch with the lowest catch percentage of his career. And you're going to tell me Cole Beasley is going to be more valuable in PPR? No. Des Bryant had more receptions. Just wanted to fact check you.
How many did he have?
69 for 838 and 6. So basically more than double the production of Cole Beasley.
It's a new team.
Gallup stepping into that role, that X position.
That should have took that deal with the Ravens because he's still unemployed.
That doesn't change my theory and my thinking behind this whatsoever. No more Witten plays a huge part in that. No more Dak. And I'm sorry, coming out of what I've seen as recently as the last few days, is Gallup is fighting. Yes, he needs to be more consistent though to make the first team.
See that touchdown
get on the football field. You're being so optimistic with this. I still stick to my theory is the guys that are probably going to be targeted most and the easiest routes for Dak, your quarterback, is going to be Cole Beasley. If I'm drafting a receiver just overall, then I'm probably going to draft Alan Hearns. I'm not looking at Michael Gallup at this particular point.
That's why Dan's the champ.
The team has got to be made of something more than Zeke running the ball, and I think that's going to be Alan Hearns.
Who's the tight end that they got?
Dalton Schultz, but he's not going to start. It's going to be probably Jeff Swaim or Blake Jarwin as the starting tight end.
Cole Beasley. There you go, Cole Beasley. Bring back Gavin Escobar. Y'all need some help.
Gavin Escobar. I liked him. That was the dude I was thinking of. Where'd he go?
He hasn't been with
Kroger.
the Cowboys.
He's with Kroger.
he's actually with the Dolphins right now.
Oh, okay.
He'll be a train. His nose is too big.
Okay, so I don't know if you're talking about a PPR league. I just kind of threw the Cole Beasley out there to kind of jab at Dan. Although I do think he's going to have a lot of targets and a lot of catches because that's a lot of has to do with Dak Prescott being the quarterback though. Because I don't think he's
as a Cowboys fan. I hope he has more than 36. thanks Cole for nothing last year.
Well, what's also funny is none of us even mentioned the name Terrence Williams.
That dude can't even catch. That's body catcher Terrence Williams.
I'm shocked he's still on the team.
Yeah, it was terrible. They signed him to an extension last year, and it was the biggest mistake. Don't even get me started on Terrence. I can't catch with my hands, Williams.
So I think we answered that part of Johnny Wilkins' questions. Leave Terrence Williams off the equation. Dan has Gallup. Ryan has Hearns, and I said technically Beasley. That's fine. Beasley / Hearns, whatever. But go with that. But, all right, so that's just some of the taste of all the fantasy mailbag questions we've been getting here on the website. It's fantasy football season. I'm excited. I cannot wait for our draft. It's a new season of fantasy football to myfantasysportstalk.com. I won the inaugural season. Dan won the second season. This is year 3, Ryan. This is when you say it's a make or break. You either put up or shut up. So what you going to do?
The third time is the charm. The Thomas Take is not here to take part this year. He's here to take over.
Okay.
We're still waiting.
We'll see. Orlando will be saying the same thing because he's looking for that title too, as well as all of our guys are. But it'll be an interesting year. And I do think the draft, it all starts with the draft coming up Sunday night. So the next time you hear from us, guys, we'll be talking about results of the draft, break down our draft. But we're also going to be bringing out another podcast in the next few days about just what's going on the website right now, because there is a ton of fantasy football knowledge and information out there right now, Dan.
Yeah, a lot of writers stepping up, putting out a lot of great stuff. I'm bringing out rankings. Graham Sweet, another fantasy writer that we have, is bringing out rankings every day this week. So for fantasy football, we got you covered. I have a couple value picks, some late round draft targets. If you're into IDP leagues, I brought out the top 100 individual defensive players.
That was an interesting piece.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that's a compliment.
It definitely is. Beyond fantasy, typical fantasy value. That was just a very interesting piece, just for football in general.
Yeah, and it would. I'm actually doing my first IDP league this year, so I put some research into it to try and figure it out. But yeah, I mean, I went through.
You're basically breaking down the best individual defensive players, and just a little bit of a spoilers. What I put out there when I posted the article, J.J. Watt isn't even the top 10, folks.
No, and
listen,
you got to be on the field if you want to make my top 10, and he just hasn't been lately.
There you go. So check that out. A lot of stuff coming up. But we'll mention that also in the next podcast. We'll go over all the fantasy football news and break down some of these lists and rankings on the next My Fantasy podcast. So stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. For Ryan Thomas, the Thomas Take podcast, and my co-host Dan Schalk, I am Brandon Reed. Till next time. See you later.